is 3 years later. It's 1904, just after high school commencement. This is the time where most of our young people jump up and get married. Soon as they pass their final examinations in solid geometry and Cicero's orations, looks like they suddenly feel themselves fit to be married. So, now, there's Mrs. Gibbs and Mrs. Webb coming down to make breakfast just as any other ordinary day. I don't have to point out to the ladies in my audience that these two women that they see before them have 3 meals a day, one of them for 20, the other for 40, and no summer vacations. Washed, cleaned the house, raised 2 children apiece, and never had a nervous breakdown. It's like one of those Middle West poets said, you gotta love life to have life, and you gotta have life to love life. It's what they call a vicious circle. There's Howie Newsom delivering the milk, and there's Cy Crowell delivering the papers like his brother before. Morning, Howie.
Morning, Cy. Anything in the papers I ought to know?
Nothing much. It's losing about the best baseball pitcher Grover's Corners ever had, George Gibbs.
Reckon he is.
He could hit and run bases too.
Yep, mighty fine ball player.
I don't see how he could give up a thing like that just to get married. Was you, Howie?
Can't tell, Cy. Never had no talent that way. Morning, Bill.
Morning, Howie.
Cy Crowell here is all worked up about George Gibbs retiring from baseball.
Yes, sir. That's the way it goes. Back in '84, we had a player. Name of Hank Todd. Went down to Maine and became a parson. Wonderful ball player. Howie, how does the weather look to you?
No, it ain't bad. Think maybe it'll clear up for good.
Morning, Howie. I think it's going to rain again.
It rained so hard, I think maybe it'll clear up for good.
Certainly hope it will.
How many you want today?
I'm going to have a house full of relations, Howie. Looks to me like I'll need 3 of milk and 2 cream.
My wife told me to tell you that we know they'll both be very happy. No, they will.
Thanks a lot, Howie. Tell your wife I hope she gets there to the wedding.
She'll be there. She'll be there if she's kin. Morning, Mrs. Webb.
Good morning, Mr. Newsom. I told you 4 quarts of milk, but I hope you can spare me another.
Yes, and 2 cream?
Yes. Will it start raining again, Mr. Newsom?
Well, I was just saying to Mrs. Gibbs is how it might clear up. Mrs. Newsom told me to tell you that we hope they'll both be very happy, Mrs. Webb. No, they will.
Thank you, and tell Mrs. Newsom I said thank you as well. And we're counting on seeing you at the wedding.
We hope to get there. Couldn't miss that. Come on, Bessie.
Well, Ma, the day has come. You lose one of your chicks.
Gibbs, don't you say another word. I feel like crying every minute.
The groom's up shaving himself, only very much up there to shave. Whistling and singing to himself like he's happy to leave us. Every now and then I catch him saying, I do to the mirror, but it don't sound very convincing to me.
I declare, Frank, I don't know how he'll get along. I've arranged his clothes for him and seen to it he's put warm things on. Frank, they're too young. Emily won't think of such things. He'll catch his death of a cold within a week.
Julia, I was just remembering my wedding morning.
Now don't start that, Frank Gibbs.
I was the scaredest young fella in the state of New Hampshire. I thought I'd make a mistake for sure. When I saw you coming down the aisle, I thought you were the prettiest young girl I'd ever seen. The only problem was, I'd never seen you before. There I was in the Congregational Church, marrying a total stranger.
And how do you think I felt? Frank, weddings are perfectly awful things. Farces, that's what they are. Here, I made you something.
Why, Julia Hersey, French toast?
Tain't hard to make, and I had to do something. Did you hear Rebecca's room?
How did you sleep last night, Julia?
Well, I heard a lot of the hours struck off.
Yes, I got a shock every time I thought of George settling down to be a family man. The great dangling thing. I tell you, Julia, the relationship between a father and a son is the darnest, awkwardest.
Well, mother and daughter's no picnic, let me tell you. Did you hear Rebecca stirring around upstairs?
They'll have their troubles, I suppose, but that's none of our business. Everybody has a right to their own troubles.
Yes. People are meant to go through life 2 by 2. It ain't natural to be lonesome.
You hear her? Julia, you know one of the things I was scaredest of most when I married you?
Oh, go along with you.
I was scared that we wouldn't have much material for conversation more than last us a few weeks. But you and I have been conversating for 20 years now, without any noticeable barren spells.
Well, good weather, bad weather. Tain't very choice, but I always find something to say. You hear that?
Yeah. It's the only day of the year Rebecca hasn't been staring around, managing everybody's schedules.
She's locked herself in a room, and I got the impression she's crying.
For sakes, this has got to stop. Rebecca! Rebecca, come and get your breakfast.
Good morning, everybody. You've 5 more hours to live.
George Gibbs, where are you going?
I'm just stepping across the way to see my girl.
Now, George, you put on your overshoes. It's raining torrents. You don't go out of this house without you're prepared for it.
Ma, it's just a step.
George, you'll catch your death of a cold and cough all through the service.
George, do as your mother tells you.
From tomorrow on, you can kill yourself in all weathers. But while you're in my house, you'll live wisely, thank you. Maybe Mrs. Webb isn't used to callers at 7 in the morning. Here, take a cup of coffee first.
Be back in a minute. Good morning, Mother Webb.
Goodness, you frightened me. Now, George, you can come in a minute out of the wet, but you know I can't ask you in.
Why not?
George, you know as well as I do. The groom can't see his bride on their wedding day, not before he sees her in church.
That's just a superstition. Good morning, Mr. Webb.
Good morning, George.
Mr. Webb, you don't believe in that superstition, do you?
There's a lot of common sense in some superstitions, George.
Millions have followed it, George, and you don't want to be the first to fly in the face of custom.
How's Emily?
She hasn't waked yet. Haven't heard a sound of her.
Emily's asleep?
No wonder. We were up till all hours sewing and packing. Now here's what I'll do. You sit down here a minute and drink this cup of coffee with Mr. Webb, and I'll go upstairs and make sure she doesn't come down and surprise you. There's some bacon too, but don't be long about it.
Well, George, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Mr. Webb, what sense could there be in a superstition like that?
Well, you see, on her wedding day, girls head out to be full of clothes in one another. Don't you think that's probably it?
Yeah, I guess I never thought of that.
A girl's apt to be a mite nervous on her wedding day.
Yeah, I wish a fella could get married without all that marching up and down.
Every man that's ever lived has felt that way, George, but it hasn't been any use. It's the woman folk who've built up weddings, my boy. For a while now, the women have had it all their own. A man looks pretty small at a wedding, George. All those good women standing shoulder to shoulder, making sure the knot is tied in a mighty public way.
But you believe in it, don't you, Mr. Webb?
Oh, yes. Don't you misunderstand me, my boy. Marriage is a wonderful thing. Wonderful thing. And don't you forget that, George.
No, sir. Mr. Webb, how old were you when you got married?
Well, you see, I'd taken some time to get settled and been away to college. But Mrs. Webb wasn't much older than what Emily is now. Age hasn't much to do with it, George, not compared with other things.
What were you going to say, Mr. Webb?
Oh, I don't know. Was I going to say something? George, I was thinking last night of some advice my father gave me when I got married. Charles, he said, Charles, start out early showing who's boss, he said. Give an order, even if it doesn't make sense. Just so they'll learn to obey. And if anything about your wife irritates you, her conversation or anything, just get up and leave the house. That'll make it clear to her, he said. And never, never let your wife know how much money you have. Never.
Well, Mr. Webb, I don't think I could.
So I took the opposite of his advice, and I've been happy ever since. And let that be a lesson to you, George. Never to ask advice on personal matters. George, are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
What?
Are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
Well, Uncle Luke's never been much interested, but I thought maybe.
A book came into my office the other day on the fallow system of raising chickens. I want you to read it. I'm thinking of beginning a small way in my backyard. I'm going to put an incubator in the cellar.
Charles, are you talking about that old incubator again? I thought you two would be talking about something worthwhile.
Well, Myrtle, if you want to give the boys some good advice, I'll go upstairs and leave you alone with him.
George, Emily's got to come down and eat her breakfast. She sends you her love, but she doesn't want to lay eyes on you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Myrtle, I guess you don't know about that older superstition.
What do you mean, Charles?
Since the cavemen, no bridegroom should see his father-in-law on the wedding day, or near it. Now remember that.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Webb. Now, I have to interrupt again here. You see, I want to show you how this all began. This wedding, this plan to spend a lifetime together. I'm awfully interested in how big things like this begin. You know how it is. You're 21 or 22, and you make some decisions. Then wish. You're 70. You've been a lawyer for 50 years, and this white-haired lady at your side has eaten over 50,000 meals with you. How do such things begin? George and Emily are going to show you the conversation that they had when they first knew that as the saying goes, they were meant for each other. But before they do, I want you to remember the days when you were very young, and particularly the days when you were first in love, and you were like a person sleepwalking, and you didn't quite see the street you were in, and you didn't quite hear everything that was being said to you. You're just a little bit crazy. Can you remember that, please? They'll be coming out of high school at 3 o'clock. George has just been elected president of the junior class, and it's June. This means he'll be president of the senior class all of next year. And Emily's just been elected secretary and treasurer. I don't have to tell you how important that is. There, they're coming down Main Street now.
I can't, Louise. I've got to go home and help my mother. Oh, Ernestine, can you come over today and do Latin? Isn't that Cicero the worst thing? Tell your mother you have to. Oh, goodbye. Goodbye, Helen. Goodbye, Fred.
Hello, Emily. Can I carry your books for you?
Thank you. It's not that far.
Excuse me a minute. Say, Bob, if I'm late to practice, start anyways, and throw Herb some long high ones for me.
Goodbye, Lizzie.
Goodbye, Lizzie. I'm awfully glad you were elected too, Emily.
Thank you.
Emily, why are you mad at me?
I'm not mad at you.
You've been treating me so funny lately.
Well, since you asked, I might as well say it. Goodbye, Miss Corcoran.
Goodbye, Miss Corcoran. What is it?
I don't like the whole change that's come over you the past year. And I'm sorry if it hurts your feelings, but I've got to tell the truth and shame the devil.
A change? What do you mean?
Well, up to a year ago, I used to like you a lot, and I used to watch you 'cause you did everything, since we've been friends for so long. And then you began spending all your time at baseball, and you never stopped to speak to anybody anymore. Not even your own family you didn't. And George, it's a fact. You've gotten awful conceited and stuck up, and all the girls say so. They might not say so to your face, but it's what they say behind your back. And it hurts me to hear them say it a little, but I've got to agree with them. Now, I'm sorry if it hurts your feelings, but I can't be sorry I said it.
I'm glad you said it, Emily. I never thought that such a thing was happening to me. I guess it's hard for a fella not to have faults creep into his character.
I expect a man to be perfect and think